Playing the viola or the violin can feel like such an upwards battle, to be quite frank, the majority of the time, but I don't want this video to be really discouraging. That is not the purpose of this video at all. It is actually a little bit of a, don't worry, we all go through this, give yourself a break. This instrument is really blooming difficult. Just simply holding the thing is ridiculous. In what other walk of life do you do this? A lot of other instruments that we play, like the piano, woodwind instruments, or even the cello, and I'm not saying the cello is not difficult, but just for the purpose of this point, you play them in a much more intuitive way. Your arms are down, they're in front of you. A lot of other instruments are just a bit more intuitive in how to hold. The flute, maybe that's a bit odd, whereas a violin or a viola is, I mean, this is stupid. There are no frets or markers for where to put your fingers. You are in complete no man's land all of the time. A lot of people ask me if there are any transferable skills from guitar, because obviously that is a string instrument, and in lots of ways a guitar looks very, very similar. Basically no, apart from rhythm and ear and musicality of it, sure. But the actual practical playing the instrument, no crossover. This means that your finger placement has to be incredibly precise, because if the weight is even slightly off on where you place your fingertip, you'll be flat or you'll be sharp. Learning the actual placement of your fingers just takes a really long time because it's all got to be muscle memory. However, you also don't really need frets because your fingers are much, much closer together than they would be on a guitar. So you also don't actually need them, which is kind of nice. But of course, having no markers makes intonation more difficult, which leads us on to the absolute bane of every string player ever. Tuning is difficult because you don't have any of these markers, you don't know where your fingers are going, but also just tuning of the instrument itself is difficult. Most of the time we have to do this by ear, particularly if you're in an orchestra. An oboist will play an A, and then you tune your A string to that, and then you have to tune the other strings by ear. You're either doing that through using the pegs, or sometimes you will have fine tuners on the end. If you're playing a violin, you are more likely to have fine tuners than on a viola. So if you are tuning a viola, you're more likely to be using these pegs, and that is a technique all of its own because you can actually snap a string if you are doing it incorrectly. So make sure you ask your teacher to show you how. The spacing between your fingers also changes from being low down on the instrument to being up high. You would think that the difference between a D and an E here is exactly the same as a D and an E up here. But no!
I am Groot.
Uh-huh.
I am Groot.
That's right.
I am Groot.
No! No, that's the button that will kill everyone!
The spacing actually gets closer together as you get up the instrument. So you have to be able to adapt at absolute lightning speed in order to be in tune the whole way across your instrument. And then, of course, there is the coordination between the two hands. Your two hands are doing completely different things. It's like patting your head and rubbing your tummy at the same time, except the fact that you have to be able to switch that at any given point. That went a lot better than I was expecting. I do, however, have a really, really good tip for this because it's something that's helped me massively, and it's mentally connecting your two elbows, which may sound a bit odd, but if you actually lock into your two elbows and try and think of them almost working together, the coordination of everything that your fingers are doing is so much easier and more precise because you're focusing on the big muscles. So you're focusing on one thing, and then that means that the rest of your forearms and your hands much more relaxed, much more anchored. Mentally lock into your elbows and you'll find that coordination becomes so much easier. Now, of course, one of the big elements of this coordination being so difficult is the bow. There are so many different kinds of bow strokes.
3 days later.
But before you even get there, you'll discover that the frog is so much heavier than the tip of the bow. So if you just place it on the string and don't change the weight at all through the course of the bow stroke, it gets quieter. So that means that with every single bow movement that you're doing, you're having to compensate for that. Thanks, whoever designed this. You also can't hold the bow in the most intuitive way. If you give somebody a violin or viola bow, they'll do this quite naturally. But no, you can't do that because apparently you can't. So you have to stick your thumb through here, your fingers wrap around here. Your poor little finger has to do an absolute Herculean task of balancing all of this weight and basically controlling it so that you don't drop it on the floor. So you can't even hold the bow normally. And then the last reason is that it takes a really long time to sound good. If you have, for example, the obvious comparison is with a piano. Now they often say piano, easy to learn, hard to master, because you've got the two clefs, two hands, it's a lot. But you do have all of the keys mapped out for you. So if somebody says play C, you can just go. Whereas a violin or viola will sound absolutely horrendous because you're basically thrown into the cockpit of an airplane without being told any of the controls, because there is so much going on here with every little micro tendon in your hands, your arms, your shoulders, your neck, your head having to do something completely different. So of course this means that it sounds absolutely horrendous at the beginning, but it's so incredibly rewarding. And like I say, this video is just a bit of fun, and I don't want this to be a discouragement to anybody. I actually mean it the complete opposite, because I think playing a string instrument can sometimes be really discouraging, and you can just be like, why am I so bad? Why am I finding this so difficult? And I just really want to reassure you that the best players in the world still find this stuff difficult. So just be kind to yourself is the ultimate message of this, and you'll realize just how incredible this instrument can be. If you would like to do a little bit more of a deep dive into the techniques of the violin and the viola, then watch this video here, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!